Hello, I'm Carlton Van Putten, founder and CEO of PayRent. Welcome to the Keys to Success podcast, where we unlock the secrets to smarter investments, smoother tenant management, and bigger profits, one episode at a time. Ready to master your property game? Let's dive in.
Welcome back to Keys to Success, where we unlock those secrets to savvy real estate ownership, one property at a time. And today, we're going to be tackling a topic that can honestly be a real game changer for a landlord like you, and that is LLCs for rental properties.
Yeah, it's interesting how many landlords I've spoken to over the years who are maybe initially hesitant about LLCs. They think it's something only mega investors, the people with huge portfolios need to worry about.
Right.
But the truth is, forming an LLC can be just a really powerful way to protect your personal assets and streamline your rental business, no matter how many properties you own, even if you just have one.
That makes sense. So for those of us, who might not be legal experts, can we break down what an LLC actually is and how it even applies to rental property?
Absolutely. An LLC, or a limited liability company, is essentially a separate legal entity that you create to own and operate your rental business. Think of it like a protective shield between your personal finances and the risks associated with being a landlord.
Okay, so it's like creating a separate business you that's responsible for the rental property, but your personal assets aren't directly tied to it.
Exactly. And that distinction is crucial because it limits your personal liability.
Okay.
Let's say a tenant sues you for an injury that happened on your property.
Mm-hmm.
With a sole proprietorship, which is how many landlords operate without even realizing it, your personal assets.
Oh, really?
Your house, your car, your savings could all be at risk.
Wow.
But if you operate under an LLC, the lawsuit is filed against the business entity, shielding your personal assets from being targeted.
Wow. That's a powerful example. It really highlights why this separation is so important.
It is, and one a real-life case that illustrates this perfectly. I once worked with a landlord who owned several properties under his own name. One of his tenants slipped and fell on an icy sidewalk, resulting in a serious injury. The tenant sued, and because the landlord didn't have an LLC, his personal assets were on the line. He ended up having to sell his primary residence to cover the legal fees and settlement costs.
Oh, my gosh.
It was devastating.
That's heartbreaking. And it really underscores how an LLC can truly be a lifesaver in those worst-case scenarios. I bet that landlord wished he had set up an LLC beforehand.
He absolutely did. It's one of those things you don't think you need until you need it, and then it's too late.
Right. So how does an LLC actually provide this protection? Is it really as simple as just setting one up and then, poof, you're magically shielded from liability?
Well, it's not magic, but it can certainly feel like it. The key is that the LLC is treated as a separate legal entity.
Okay.
It has its own bank accounts, its own contracts, and its own legal responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So if the LLC is sued, the plaintiff can typically only go after the assets owned by the LLC, not your personal assets.
That makes sense. So it's like building a legal firewall between your rental business and your personal life.
Exactly. And that separation is crucial not just for liability protection, but also for organization and peace of mind.
Okay.
Imagine owning multiple rental properties.
Mm-hmm.
Things could get messy fast trying to keep track of finances and legal obligations for each one.
Yeah, I can see how juggling multiple properties without a clear structure could quickly become a nightmare.
Right. Separate LLCs for each property can streamline your finances and help contain potential problems. Think of it like compartmentalizing your business. If one property runs into trouble, it doesn't necessarily impact the others because they're each operating under their own LLC umbrella.
So it's like having separate firewalls within your rental business, preventing problems from spreading.
It is, and it's not just about protection. LLCs can offer tax advantages as well.
Okay, now you're talking my language. Everyone loves a good tax break, especially when it comes to real estate.
For sure, LLCs benefit from what's called pass-through taxation.
Okay.
This means that the profits and losses from your rental business are not taxed at the corporate level. Instead, they pass through the LLC and are reported on your personal income tax return.
So it's like the LLC is a conduit for the income and expenses, and you're ultimately responsible for paying the taxes as an individual.
Exactly. And here's where it's interesting. You can potentially take advantage of certain deductions and credits that are available to businesses.
Okay.
For example, depreciation repairs, property taxes, mortgage interest, even home office expenses if you have a dedicated space for managing your rentals.
So not only are you protecting your personal assets, but you're also potentially reducing your tax burden. I'm starting to see why so many landlords are turning to LLCs.
They really can be a powerful tool. Of course, it's crucial to remember that tax laws are complex and vary from state to state. Consulting with a qualified tax professional is essential to fully understand the implications and ensure you're taking advantage of all the benefits available to you.
Absolutely. It's always wise to get expert advice when it comes to taxes, especially when you're dealing with a business structure like an LLC.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, we've covered the why of forming an LLC, and it's clear that there are some compelling benefits from liability protection to tax advantages and organizational efficiency. But what about the how? What are the actual steps involved in setting up this protective fortress for your rental business?
Great question. While the process can vary slightly depending on your state, there are some common steps involved in forming an LLC.
Let's walk through those steps so our listeners can get a better understanding of what's involved in creating this separate legal entity.
Sounds good. The first step is choosing a name for your LLC. You'll want to make sure the name is available and complies with your state's naming requirements.
So it's like naming a child, but for your business.
Got it. What's next?
Next, you'll need to file the necessary paperwork with your state's Secretary of State or equivalent agency.
Okay.
This typically involves filing articles of organization, which outline the basic information about your LLC, such as its name, purpose, and registered agent. Sounds like some legal legwork, but I guess that's to be expected when you're creating a separate legal entity. Is that all, or are there more hoops to jump through?
There are a few more steps to ensure you're setting things up correctly. One of the most important is creating an operating agreement. This document outlines how the LLC will be managed, how profits and losses will be distributed, and how decisions will be made. Think of it as the rule book for your LLC.
So it's like a constitution for your business, outlining the powers and responsibilities of everyone involved.
That's a great way to put it, and it's a document you'll want to create carefully as it can be legally binding. It's often a good idea to consult with an attorney to ensure your operating agreement is comprehensive and protects your interests.
Makes sense. You don't want to cut corners when it comes to the legal foundation of your business.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of legal considerations, it's important to understand that forming an LLC can sometimes have implications for your existing mortgage.
Oh, how does that work?
Well, transferring the title of your property to the LLC might require you to get a new mortgage or modify your existing one. Some lenders view LLCs as riskier borrowers than individuals, so you might face higher interest rates or stricter lending terms.
So it's like you're starting over as a borrower, even though you might have a great personal credit history.
In a way, yes. The lender is now assessing the creditworthiness of your LLC, which is a separate entity. This is why it's crucial to have open communication with your lender throughout the LLC formation process. Discuss your plans with them early on and explore the potential implications for your mortgage.
That's great advice. It's always better to have those conversations up front and avoid any surprises down the road. Now, before we move on to the next stage of our LLC journey, is there anything else landlords should keep in mind during this initial setup phase? Anything that tends to trip people up?
One common mistake landlords make is failing to properly inform their tenants about the change in ownership structure, even though you're still the one managing the property and interacting with them on a day-to-day basis. All legal documents and communications should now be in the name of the LLC.
So it's about being transparent with tenants and making sure they understand the new setup?
Exactly. Send them a formal notice explaining that the property is now owned by an LLC and provide the LLC's contact information. This not only ensures legal compliance, but also helps maintain a professional and organized image for your business.
That makes sense. It's all about building trust and transparency with your tenants, even when making structural changes to your business. Okay, we've covered the basics of setting up an LLC, but what about the ongoing management? How do things change once you're actually operating under an LLC?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll delve into more deeply in the next part of our discussion.
Perfect. Stay tuned, everyone, because we'll be back soon to explore the practical ins and outs of managing your rental business under the umbrella of an LLC. Welcome back to Keys to Success. Last time we laid the groundwork, exploring the what and the why of forming an LLC for your rental properties. But now let's get practical.
Okay.
What does it actually look like to manage your business under this new structure?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And one of the first things landlords really need to shift their mindset around is finances.
Okay.
You remember that separation we talked about?
Uh-huh.
It's not just legal, it needs to be practical in your day-to-day operations.
You're talking about keeping personal and business expenses totally distinct, even though it's, my business. That's got to take discipline.
Discipline is key. Yeah, imagine this. You're reviewing your LLC's bank statements, and right there between the mortgage payment and property taxes is a charge for, let's say, a family vacation.
Okay.
That's commingling funds, and it weakens the entire purpose of the LLC.
Yikes, yeah, I get it. It's like poking holes in that protective field we worked so hard to create. And so separate bank accounts for each LLC are non-negotiable.
Absolutely. It's not just a good practice, it's essential for maintaining the legal integrity of your LLC. And honestly, it makes your life so much easier come tax time.
Okay, speaking of taxes, we touched on pass-through taxation before, but how does that actually play out when you're filing? What do landlords need to know?
Good question. Here's a simplified example. Let's say your LLC generated $20,000 in rental income this year. You also had $8,000 in deductible expenses like mortgage interest repairs and property taxes. That means your LLC had a profit of $12,000.
Okay,
So that $12,000 profit isn't taxed at the corporate level, right?
right.
Instead, it passes through to your personal income tax return. You'll report this income and expenses on Schedule E, along with any other income you have.
So even though the business made the profit, I'm the one paying the taxes on it based on my individual tax bracket.
Precisely. And because you're reporting the income and expenses directly, you can take advantage of those deductions and credits we talked about earlier, potentially lowering your overall tax liability. It's a win-win.
Okay, that's starting to make more sense. But enough about numbers. Let's talk about people. What changes when you're interacting with tenants under an LLC?
Transparency is key. While you're still the point person, it's essential to communicate that the property is now owned by an LLC. All leases should be signed in the LLC's name, not your personal name.
So even casual interactions like maintenance requests should be handled under the LLC's name.
Ideally, yes, it reinforces that separation and helps protect you legally. Think of it like wearing a different hat when dealing with tenants. You're representing the LLC, not yourself as an individual.
Got it. It's about maintaining that professional distance even in everyday interactions. Now let's talk about a landlord's biggest fear getting sued. How does an LLC actually protect you in those real-life scenarios?
Let's say a tenant claims they were injured because you neglected a repair. With a sole proprietorship, your personal assets are potentially on the line, but with an LLC, the lawsuit is against the business, not you personally.
So the LLC's assets, like the rental property itself, are at risk, but my personal savings, home, etc., are shielded.
Exactly. It's like that legal firewall is doing its job, deflecting the blow.
That's a huge relief. But are there any situations where that protection could be compromised?
There are. It's called piercing the corporate veil. Essentially, if you're not respecting the LLC as a separate entity, commingling funds, acting fraudulently, a court might hold you personally liable.
So it's not a foolproof system, but as long as I'm operating responsibly, it's a powerful layer of protection.
That's the key. Treat the LLC with respect, and we will respect you right back. Now imagine you own multiple properties. An LLC for each one isn't just about organization. It's about smart risk management.
Oh, right, the separate firewalls concept. Explain that a bit more for those of us still building our portfolios.
Let's say one of your properties experiences a major issue, a fire, a flood, a lawsuit. If that property is held under its own LLC, the financial fallout is contained to your other properties, and your personal finances are protected from the ripple effect.
That's brilliant. Each property becomes its own self-contained ecosystem, minimizing my overall risk.
Exactly, and that can give you the confidence to expand your portfolio more aggressively, knowing you've built in these safety measures.
I'm loving this LLC strategy more and more, but are there any downsides, any times when an LLC might not be the best fit for a landlord?
There are a few scenarios where an LLC might not be necessary or even beneficial. For example, if you only own one rental property and have excellent insurance coverage, the added complexity and cost of an LLC might not be worth it.
So it's really about weighing the pros and cons based on your individual situation.
Absolutely. And don't forget, we're just scratching the surface here. Talking to a lawyer and a tax professional is essential for making the right decision for your specific circumstances.
Great point. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that often gets overlooked when discussing LLCs, the impact on financing.
Ah, yes. This is where things can get a bit tricky.
I'm sensing a but coming.
While some lenders view LLCs as riskier borrowers than individuals, they might require higher interest rates or impose stricter lending terms when dealing with an LLC.
So even if I have a stellar personal credit history, forming an LLC could potentially hurt my chances of getting a favorable loan.
It's possible the lender is evaluating the LLC as a separate entity, and its financial profile might not be as established as your personal one. That's why transparency and early communication with your lender are crucial.
Right. So don't spring the LLC on them at the last minute. Involve them in the process from the beginning to explore the potential implications.
Exactly. And it's not just about mortgages. Forming an LLC can also affect your insurance needs.
Oh, right. Because standard homeowners insurance doesn't usually cover rental properties. We all know that.
right? You'll need landlord insurance, but with an LLC, you might also need additional coverage like commercial liability insurance to protect the business entity itself.
Okay, so it's like layering your protection insurance for the property insurance for me as the landlord, and then potentially additional coverage for the LLC.
Exactly. It's about creating a comprehensive safety net that minimizes your risk from all angles. And speaking of protection, we've talked a lot about the tangible benefits of LLCs, but there's also an intangible aspect that's often overlooked, the peace of mind.
Ah, yes. The emotional side of things, I imagine knowing you've taken steps to protect your assets and streamline your business can feel pretty liberating.
It absolutely can. It allows you to focus on the big picture, growing your portfolio, providing quality housing for your tenants without constantly worrying about personal liability or financial turmoil.
So it's about more than just numbers on a balance sheet. It's about reducing stress and fostering a sense of control over your business.
Precisely. And that empowerment can be incredibly motivating and lead to even greater success.
I love that we've covered so much ground already, but I want to touch on one more area before we wrap up.
I'm all ears.
Let's talk about the practicalities of actually running the business under an LLC. What are some of the day-to-day things landlords should be mindful of?
One thing that often trips people up is maintaining proper documentation. Remember, the LLC is a separate legal entity, so every transaction, every contract, every communication should be in the LLC's name.
So no more signing lease agreements with my own name, even if it feels more natural.
Right. It's all about consistency and reinforcing that separation. It might feel a bit awkward at first, but trust me, it's worth it in the long run.
Got it. What other practical tips do you have for landlords operating under an LLC? Any traps to avoid?
One common mistake is neglecting to hold regular LLC meetings. Yes, even if you're the sole member of the LLC, it's important to document your decisions and activities.
So minutes from meetings, even if it's just me talking to myself.
Exactly. It might seem silly, but those minutes can be crucial if you ever need to prove that you are operating the LLC properly.
Okay, so dotting those I's and crossing those T's even when it feels a bit like going through the motions.
Precisely. And another thing to keep in mind is that your LLC needs to file its own tax returns separate from your personal returns.
Wait, so even though the income and expenses pass through to my personal return, the LLC still needs to file its own paperwork.
That's right. It's usually an informational return, but it's still a requirement.
Okay, this is where it starts to feel a bit overwhelming. It sounds like running an LLC requires a whole new level of organization and diligence.
It does take some effort, but remember, there are resources available to help you. You can hire a bookkeeper or accountant to handle the financial aspects, and there are online services that can help you manage the legal and administrative tasks.
That's reassuring. It's not like I have to become a legal and accounting expert overnight just to form an LLC.
Exactly, and with the right tools and support, managing an LLC can become a seamless part of your business operations.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from finances and taxes to tenant interactions and practical management tips. It's clear that operating under an LLC adds a layer of complexity, but the benefits, the protection, the organization, the peace of mind are undeniable.
I couldn't agree more. It's about making a strategic investment in your business and your future.
And remember, folks, we're not legal or tax experts, so always consult with qualified professionals to make sure you're making the right decisions for your unique situation.
Absolutely. It's all about getting personalized advice that aligns with your goals and circumstances.
Great point. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier, the emotional benefits of operating under an LLC.
I love that you're bringing this up. It's something we often overlook, but it's so important.
It's easy to get caught up in the legal and financial details, but ultimately it's about how this structure makes you feel as a landlord.
Exactly. And for many landlords, forming an LLC brings a sense of calm and security. They can sleep better at night knowing they've taken steps to protect their hard-earned assets.
So it's about more than just numbers on a balance sheet. It's about reducing stress and fostering a sense of control over your business.
Absolutely. And that peace of mind can be priceless. It allows you to focus on what you're passionate about, building your rental business, providing quality housing, and achieving your financial goals without the constant weight of worry on your shoulders.
What a fantastic way to frame it. It's about creating a foundation of confidence and stability that empowers you to thrive as a landlord.
Exactly. And that empowerment can ripple out in so many positive ways.
Welcome back to Keys to Success. We've spent this episode really unlocking that vault of knowledge about LLCs for rental properties. And honestly, my head is spinning a bit in a good way.
It is a lot to take in for sure. Yeah, we've gone from the basic definition of an LLC all the way to, nuanced day-to-day management and the surprising emotional benefits.
Exactly. But now I want to bring it back to our listeners. They're the ones out there, making decisions about their rental businesses. So if you're a landlord listening to this, how do you know if an LLC is actually the right move for you?
That's the golden question. And unfortunately, there's no magic 8-ball answer that fits every situation.
It would make things a lot easier, though, wouldn't it? Just shake the 8-ball and get a definitive yes LLC or nope, not for you.
I wish. But in all seriousness, this is a decision that requires careful consideration. And there are a few key questions landlords should ask themselves.
Okay, let's walk through those questions. What's the first thing to consider with weighing that LLC decision?
Start with your risk tolerance. How comfortable are you with the possibility of personal liability? If the thought of a lawsuit putting your personal assets at risk keeps you up at night, an LLC might be the peace of mind you need.
Makes sense. Some people are naturally more risk averse, and an LLC provides that extra layer of protection.
Exactly. And then there's the size and complexity of your rental business. If you own multiple properties, especially in different locations, the organizational benefits of LLCs become even more appealing.
Right, those separate firewalls can prevent a problem with one property from impacting your entire portfolio.
Precisely. And as we've discussed, LLCs can also offer tax advantages, although it's essential to consult with a tax professional to understand the specific implications for your situation.
Absolutely. Taxes are complex, and you don't want to make any assumptions. Okay, so we've talked about risk tolerance, the size of your business, and potential tax benefits. What other factors should landlords consider?
Don't forget about the cost. Forming and maintaining an LLC does involve expenses, filing fees, annual reports, potentially even professional legal and accounting services.
So it's an investment, not just a one-time cost. Landlords need to weigh those expenses against the potential benefits.
Precisely. And there's also the administrative burden to consider. Operating under an LLC requires more meticulous record-keeping, separate bank accounts, and compliance with state regulations.
It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Definitely not. It requires ongoing diligence and attention to detail, but for many landlords, the peace of mind and protection that an LLC provides are well worth the effort.
Okay, so we've laid out the key questions landlords should consider when making this decision. But what if you're still on the fence? What's the best way to move forward?
Information is power. Talk to other landlords who have formed LLCs, get advice from legal and tax professionals, and do your own research to fully understand the implications.
It's about gathering all the information and then making an informed decision that aligns with your individual goals and circumstances.
Exactly. And remember, even if you decide that an LLC isn't the right fit for you right now, it's something you can always revisit as your business grows and evolves.
Your needs might change over time, and it's important to be adaptable and make adjustments as necessary.
Absolutely. The world of real estate is dynamic, and successful landlords are the ones who stay informed and make strategic decisions that support their long-term vision.
So true. Well, as we wrap up this episode of Keys to Success, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I'm all yours.
It's this knowledge is your most valuable asset. The more you understand about the tools and strategies available to you, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of real estate and build a thriving business.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's all about empowering yourselves with information and making choices that lead to success.
A huge thank you to PayRent for providing the insights that inform this episode. They're an incredible resource for landlords, offering valuable tools and support to help you streamline your operations and create positive tenant relationships.
And of course, a big thank you to all our amazing listeners for tuning in. We appreciate your time and engagement.
And remember, whether you choose to form an LLC or not, we're here to support you on your journey to real estate success. Keep those properties thriving, and we'll see you next time on Keys to Success.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Keys to Success. I invite you to check out past episodes and follow us on your favorite podcast platform to get notified when new ones are released. And when you're ready to simplify managing your properties, be sure to visit us at www.payrent.com.